Have you ever wondered why your mind jumps straight to the worst-case scenario? Why a small delay in someone's text message feels like rejection? Why a sudden noise in the house at night feels like danger? Why a simple mistake at work spirals into a story about losing everything? It happens quickly, silently, automatically, almost as if your mind is preparing for a threat that isn't really there. Almost as if your brain knows something you don't. The truth is both simple and unsettling. Your brain is still wired for a world that no longer exists. Today, we pull back the layers of biology, psychology, and hidden evolutionary history to reveal why your mind imagines dangers that never actually happen, and why this ancient instinct still shapes your life in ways you rarely notice. This is full frontal neuron. And this is what happens inside the human mind when it predicts the worst. The evolutionary blueprint. To understand why your mind leaps to catastrophe, we need to go back, far back, into the world your brain evolved to survive. A world of predators, scarcity, isolation, and rapid environmental change. A world where hesitation could get you killed. In that world, your ancestors had one job: detect threats before those threats detected them. And so the human mind developed a bias, so powerful it still governs your thinking today. Threat-first perception. Your brain always assumes danger first, then works backward to determine whether the fear is real. It's not a flaw. It's a survival mechanism. The creatures who underestimated danger didn't survive long enough to pass on their genes. But the ones who imagined threats early and often lived to see the next sunrise. This ancient survival script is still written into your neural architecture. The amygdala, a small almond-shaped structure deep inside your brain, acts as an alarm system. It detects danger before you're even consciously aware of it. A snap of sound, a flash of movement, a shift in facial expression. Before you have time to think, the amygdala fires, demanding your body prepare for the worst. Your heart rate rises. Your muscles tighten. Your breath shortens. Your attention narrows. Your imagination sharpens into vivid, threatening possibilities. This is not an overreaction. This is evolutionary efficiency. A brain built for survival is a brain that rehearses danger, even when none exists. But evolution is only the first layer. To understand why your mind catastrophizes, we need to explore how your brain processes information in the modern world, and why it often misfires. The negativity bias. Your brain has what psychologists call negativity bias, a tendency to focus more on potential threats than opportunities, more on flaws than strengths, more on what could go wrong than what could go right. It's not your imagination. Negative thoughts feel louder, stickier, heavier. A single criticism can overshadow a dozen compliments. A small failure can eclipse months of progress. A minor uncertainty can spiral into a catastrophic prediction. Your brain treats negativity like survival data. It logs it, revisits it, amplifies it, because in the ancient world, ignoring good news rarely cost you anything. But ignoring bad news, that could cost you your life. And so today, even in a relatively safe world, your brain continues to search for danger, external or imagined. It is a system built to overreact. But negativity bias is only the beginning. The mind has dozens of cognitive distortions, mental habits that twist reality, and one of them is responsible for turning everyday life into a battlefield of imagined dangers. It's called catastrophizing. The brain's disaster simulator. If negativity bias focuses your attention on danger, Catastrophizing is the mental engine that gives that danger a storyline. It is the brain's habit of taking a single uncertain moment and stretching it into the worst possible outcome. You know the pattern. You cough once and your mind jumps to serious illness. You send a message and get no reply, and your mind imagines rejection. You notice a minor mistake at work, and your mind predicts unemployment. You hear a noise downstairs, and your mind assumes intrusion. Nothing significant happened. Nothing objectively changed. But your mind fills in the blanks with threat. This is not imagination, it is prediction. Behind the scenes, your brain is running a complex simulation designed to answer one question. What is the worst thing that could happen, and how do I survive it? Your brain creates these disaster scenarios for a reason. It is trying to keep you alive, even if the threat is exaggerated, distorted, or entirely fictional. Inside the brain, the amygdala sounds the alarm. The prefrontal cortex, the rational part of your mind, tries to analyze the situation. But when the amygdala fires strongly enough, it hijacks the system. Thoughts speed up. Logic slows down. Your imagination becomes a survival tool, not a source of truth. The purpose is not accuracy. The purpose is preparation. Your brain would rather mistakenly predict disaster 1,000 times than fail to notice danger once. But the modern world contains very few life or death threats. So your brain misapplies ancient survival patterns to emails, deadlines, conversations, social interactions, and daily stress. It's using a weapon designed for predators. To fight problems that don't require that kind of force. This leads us to another powerful mechanism behind catastrophic thinking. The mind's ability to travel through time. Mental time travel. Humans possess an extraordinary cognitive ability no other species uses the way we do. Prospective simulation, the ability to mentally project ourselves into the future. It is the reason we plan. The reason we prepare. The reason we build societies, technologies, and long-term goals. But this gift has a shadow. Because the same neural circuits that imagine possibility also imagine danger. And when the amygdala is activated, your mind doesn't travel calmly into the future. It races into it, seeking out everything that could go wrong. You begin rehearsing disasters. You begin anticipating pain. You begin experiencing emotions for events that have not happened and may never happen. Your brain reacts to these imagined scenarios as if they are real. Cortisol rises. Your breathing changes. Your muscles tense. Your prefrontal cortex becomes overloaded. The simulation becomes a physiological event. You feel fear without any external cause. You suffer consequences without any actual threat. This internal time travel is the engine of anxiety. It is the mind's attempt to prepare you, protect you, and shield you from danger. But preparation turns into fear when the simulation becomes your reality. To understand why this happens, and why your brain sometimes cannot stop, we need to examine the internal narrator that shapes your thoughts, your fears, and your predictions. The internal narrator. Inside your mind there is a voice. A narrator. An interpreter of events. It tells you what situations mean. It predicts what comes next. It creates stories, sometimes accurate, often exaggerated. Most people think this narrator is their true self. But neuroscientists understand it differently. This inner voice is not you. It is a cognitive function, your brain's attempt to construct meaning from incomplete information. When you experience uncertainty, the narrator panics. It hates not knowing. It hates unanswered questions. So it fills silence with guesses. And guesses, by default, lean toward threat. The narrator's logic sounds like this. She didn't text back something is wrong. My boss said we need to talk something bad is coming. My chest feels tight, there must be a serious problem. The house creaked, someone is here. Your narrator is not trying to scare you. It is trying to protect you. It assumes danger so it can prepare you. But the narrator has a flaw. It cannot tell the difference between imagination and reality. If you imagine a threat vividly, the narrator believes it. If you rehearse a disaster repeatedly, the narrator accepts it as likely. And when this internal narrator becomes overwhelmed or overly active, it creates what psychologists call catastrophic narrative loops. These loops can trap you in repeating cycles of fear, replaying the same disturbing possibilities again and again. You are not broken. Your brain is simply doing what it was designed to do: anticipate danger at all costs. But now the costs are emotional, not physical. And the narrator is not the only factor. There is a deeper system influencing your catastrophizing, one that predates language, story, and conscious thought. The ancient pattern recognition circuitry of the human mind. Pattern detection, the brain that sees too much. The human brain is a pattern detection machine. It looks for connections, meaning, cause and effect. This ability helped your ancestors survive. They learned where predators hid when storms arrived, which behaviors led to safety. Your brain still searches for patterns, but in the modern world the threats are subtle, ambiguous, psychological rather than physical. So the brain begins detecting patterns that aren't really there. A late-night noise becomes a sign of danger. A change in tone becomes a coming argument. A mistake becomes a future failure. A symptom becomes a serious diagnosis. The scientific term for this is apophenia, seeing meaningful connections in random or unrelated information. And when combined with fear, uncertainty, or stress, apophenia becomes a powerful engine for worst-case thinking. Your brain begins to create stories out of fragments. It takes a small clue and constructs a large threat. It turns coincidence into danger. This system is not malfunctioning, it is overfunctioning. It is a hyperactive survival instinct, misapplied to a world where real danger is rare. But there is one more factor, a cognitive bias so universal, so deeply rooted, that it silently shapes nearly every fear you experience. The negativity bias, your mind's built-in dark filter. There is a cognitive bias that shapes nearly every emotional experience you have. It affects memory, perception, judgment, and most importantly, danger detection. It is called the negativity bias, the brain's tendency to prioritize negative information over positive or neutral cues. And it runs deeper than you think. Your mind is wired to remember insults more than compliments, to notice threats more than safety, to respond more intensely to fear than to calm. A single unpleasant outcome can outweigh dozens of neutral or positive ones. This is not weakness. It is evolutionary math. The cost of ignoring a potential threat was historically much higher than the cost of overreacting to a harmless one. Failing to notice a predator could end your life. Imagining a predator that wasn't there only cost you energy. So the brain built a powerful rule. When in doubt, assume danger. That rule still operates today. But instead of physical threats, it attaches itself to your thoughts. A neutral expression becomes disapproval. A symptom becomes a diagnosis. A delay becomes a sign. A possibility becomes a prediction. This bias is why your mind leaps toward worst-case scenarios effortlessly and repeatedly. It is not pessimism. It is biology. But negativity bias doesn't work alone. It is supported by another mechanism, one that gives catastrophic thoughts their emotional weight and makes them feel real. The availability heuristic, why fear feels like fact. Your brain has a shortcut for estimating how likely something is. It is called the availability heuristic. The rule is simple. If you can imagine something easily, your brain believes it is more likely to happen. And worst-case scenarios are incredibly easy to imagine. Why? Because fear sharpens imagery. Threats are vividly encoded. Negative possibilities light up emotional regions of the brain, particularly the amygdala, which makes them feel urgent and plausible. This means, the more vividly you imagine a disaster, the more real it feels, and the more likely your mind thinks it is. Your mind mistakes vividness for probability. One frightening story, one dramatic headline, one memory of something that went wrong, that is all it takes. The brain retrieves it effortlessly. And because it's easy to retrieve, the brain assumes. This must be common. This must be possible. This could be next. The heuristic is not logical. It is fast, emotional, and automatic. And it is one of the main reasons catastrophic thinking feels intuitive, even when the odds are microscopic. But there is one more psychological principle, and it explains why catastrophizing is extremely difficult to stop once it begins. It is the mechanism that keeps the fear loop running. The fear loop, why worry becomes a habit. Catastrophic thinking is not a single event. It is a cycle. A feedback loop. A self-reinforcing system designed by evolution to keep you alert. It works like this. You detect a possible threat. Your mind imagines the worst outcome. Your body reacts with fear. The fear feels like evidence of danger. The cycle restarts. The emotion becomes proof. The physical sensations of fear, tight chest, racing mind, tense muscles, convince your brain that the imagined scenario must be real. This reinforces the catastrophic narrative, making it stronger each time it is rehearsed. The loop is hard to escape because it is self-validating. Your brain generates fear. Your body confirms it. Your thoughts interpret it. Your emotions amplify it. A closed circuit of threat perception. But there is a way to interrupt this process, one that works not by fighting the brain's instincts, but by understanding them. How to break the cycle, reclaiming cognitive control. So how do you break free from a mind that seems engineered to sabotage you with fear, doubt, and catastrophic predictions? You start by understanding a simple truth. Your brain listens to repetition more than reality. And for most people, the thoughts repeated the most are the negative ones. Let's walk through the practical steps that physiologists, neuroscientists, and clinical psychologists consistently find effective. 1. Label the bias, don't fight it. When the brain predicts a disaster, losing your job, getting sick, being rejected, most people try to argue with the thought. But arguing with fear amplifies fear. A more effective strategy is to label the mental distortion. This is catastrophizing. This is negativity bias talking. This is my amygdala overreacting. Labeling shifts activity from the amygdala to the prefrontal cortex, the brain's decision-making center. It reroutes you from emotional reasoning to cognitive reasoning. The fear doesn't vanish, but its authority does. 2. Conduct a reality audit. Ask 3 questions. What evidence supports this fear? What evidence contradicts it? What is the most probable outcome, not the most dramatic? Your brain imagines extremes because they're memorable. But reality tends to be boring, ordinary, and statistically predictable. By forcing your brain to justify the scenario logically, you expose the bias as emotionally inflated and mathematically improbable. 3. Interrupt the loop physically. The fastest way to break catastrophic thinking is not mental, it's physical. Deep exhale, slow inhale. A walk, a cold splash. A posture change, a stretch. Even unclenching your jaw sends a signal to your nervous system. Why? Because your body has 2 operating modes. Sympathetic, fight or flight. Parasympathetic, calm and connect. If the body stays in fight or flight, the mind assumes danger. If the body relaxes, the mind follows. Your nervous system is a 2-way street. Change your physiology and your psychology recalibrates. 4. Reframe uncertainty as neutral, not dangerous. At the root of nearly every worst-case scenario is one emotion: uncertainty. Humans hate uncertainty because for most of history, uncertainty meant danger. But modern uncertainty, emails, dating, job interviews, is psychological, not physical. A reframe that neuroscientists encourage is this: uncertainty is not danger, it is simply information I do not yet have. This single shift reduces the brain's need to fill the gap with threat-based imagination. 5. Practice cognitive exposure to your fears. One of the most scientifically validated techniques is controlled exposure, thinking about your fear on purpose, but in a structured, time-limited way. Example: set a timer for 2 minutes. Write out the fear in detail. Stop when the timer ends. Over time, your brain becomes bored of the scenario. Repetition turns fear from a threat into a thought. And once it's a thought, you control it, not the other way around. 6. Build a habit of positive anticipation. Your brain is not naturally optimistic, but it can be trained. Each morning ask, what is one good thing that could happen today? This is not toxic positivity. It is neuroplasticity. You are teaching the brain to consider possibilities beyond survival and threat. 7. Create an internal decision rule. Catastrophic thinkers often wait for the perfect feeling of confidence before acting. But confidence rarely comes first. Action creates confidence. Repetition stabilizes it. Develop a rule such as, if it's safe, aligned with my goals, and I've thought it through, I will act even if I feel anxious. This breaks the brain's dependence on fear as a decision-making tool. Your mind may generate the worst-case scenario automatically, but overcoming it is a learned skill. Fear may be ancient, but control is modern, and once you understand the machinery of your own psychology, you become the one writing the script instead of reacting to it. Rewriting the story, from survival mode to conscious living. So here is the truth most people never hear. Your brain is not built to make you happy. It is built to keep you alive. For millions of years, survival required imagining every possible threat, every shadow that could hide a predator, every unknown sound that could signal danger. Your ancestors are the ones who imagined the worst-case scenario and prepared for it. Their vigilance became your inheritance. Their fears became your instincts. Their caution shaped the architecture of your mind. But here is the part they could never prepare you for. The world changed. Your brain didn't. Today the threats are psychological, not physical: social rejection, financial stress, uncertainty about the future, the pressure to succeed. Yet your ancient nervous system reacts to them as if they were predators hiding in the dark. You are living in a modern world with a Stone Age brain. But that does not mean you are doomed to be a prisoner of your worst thoughts. Because unlike your ancestors, you have awareness. And awareness is the first tool in the history of our species that lets you take control of the machinery running your mind. You can observe your thoughts instead of obeying them. You can interrupt fear instead of feeding it. You can decode bias instead of being directed by it. You can respond consciously instead of reacting instinctively. Once you understand your brain's architecture, you become the architect. That is the turning point. The moment when the story stops being about fear and starts being about agency. And the most powerful shift of all is this. You realize that imagining the worst-case scenario is not a flaw, it is a feature. It is a system designed to protect you. A system you can learn to regulate rather than suppress. When fear rises, you no longer ask, "What is wrong with me?" You ask, "What is my brain trying to protect me from, and is that protection still necessary?" That single question transforms catastrophizing into understanding, and understanding into control. Because once you understand fear, it loses its power. Once you understand bias, it becomes predictable. Once you understand your mind, you no longer run from it, you work with it. This is the foundation of psychological mastery. Not eliminating fear, but redefining your relationship with it. Not silencing the negative thoughts, but learning to interpret them. Not preventing your mind from imagining worst-case scenarios, but training it to imagine something else too. The realistic outcome, the balanced perspective, the future you actually want. In the end, this isn't a story about fear. It is a story about capacity. The capacity to evolve beyond your own biological programming. Because while your brain may be ancient, your awareness is modern. And the moment you choose to use it, you stop living in survival mode and start living in conscious control. Thank you for joining Full Frontal Neuron. Please consider subscribing for more educational content.